email up. All right, so this is the Parks Commission meeting of January 11th, 2021. And let me do a quick reading of my little spiel. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and that this meeting of the Lunenburg Park Commission is being conducted remotely. Accordingly, for those that are participating via video, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and the steps community can take to prevent the spread. Let's see, I had to let Susanna in. Let's go back to that. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page, can be accessed through the town manager's webpage and allows for public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of this meeting. As always, our meetings will consist of public comment. Let me do a quick roll call vote. Let me know if you're here. Susanna Jewell. She may not be on yet. Dave Passios.
Here.
Chris Sullivan.
Here.
Kayla Wright.
Here.
And Anna Lockwood.
Here.
Susanna, can you hear us? Oh, she has no audio. Let's see. Susanna, do you want to try to logging off and trying to come back in? Okay. So if there's like a doorbell sound in the background and it doesn't look like I noticed it, let me know, because the settings are on now. I guess when somebody tries to come in, it makes a noise, and it should pick up on my speaker. So, all right. So we are all here. We are called to order. That was at 6:30 p.m. Our first agenda items this evening are approval of our minutes. Let me see if that last one went through, Chris. It's not. So I'm having problems getting the November 6th minutes, which they're very photo heavy, because that's the one that we did as a group walking tour of Marshall Park. And I wanted to include the as many photos as we could, just for documentation reasons. So we're not going to be able to approve those tonight. And based on what apparently is the size of the document, I'll probably have to print it and distribute it to everybody that way, which is fine. I don't mind dropping everybody's in their mailbox. So we're going to skip over November 6th, but we have November 9th and December 1st minutes. Did you all receive those?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I've got both.
Did anybody have any changes or anything they wanted done to those minutes?
No, they look good by me.
All right.
Motion to approve.
So
Second.
November 9th and December 1st, Chris?
Correct, both.
Dave, you seconded. Let's do a quick roll call on that. Dave?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Anna?
I wasn't officially part of the part of the commission.
Choices. You can either abstain and not take a vote on it, or you can vote like a regular member. You don't have to be present too.
Okay. Aye.
Perfect. So those have passed. I've got to work on, I don't know if anybody's caught it. I have not been great about sending them over to town hall. So hopefully this week I can get like the last 5 months worth of meetings sent over to town hall. So we'll get those updated. We'll do November 6th at our next meeting. Kayla, do you have any updates for us, general park wise?
Winter programs have added, they're open, and the skating rink has been ordered for Marshall, hoping that we have enough decent weather to use it once it gets here. The fire department will flood it for me once we get it built, and Rob said that DPW can help me put it together, because I certainly can't put it together all by myself. And then once it's together, I just have to let the fire chief know, and he said that they'll flood it for us, so.
Let
Other
me
than
know
that,
if you need help with the skating rink. We've had a group of National Honor Society kids that have been in contact with us. Looking
oh,
for
perfect.
do. We have somebody going through the parks and just looking for trash. She's doing that this weekend. And then we sort of siphoned somebody else off to the Conservation Commission to do some mapping. But if you have something, I'm sure we can get some kids that need ours.
Okay, I'll let you know when it comes in.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have non-departmental beach policy. Come up with anything on that, Kayla?
So I did, but I didn't send it out because I figured we could talk about it before I create it and then have to recreate it and recreate it. Based on everybody's that I found, obviously this last year was different than any other year. But most people like Grafton, Air, Westboro, all of those ones that I could find, Lancaster, theirs is pretty much a $50 fee per hour. However, if the people renting it do not have a season pass, then everybody in the group has to, for the majority of them, not all of them, but I would say out of the 6 I found, 4 of them require everybody in the group that will be there to purchase a day pass. They offer the day pass at a cheaper rate for a group, but in order to rent it, it has to be, the person has to either have a season pass, and once they meet their guest, so like let's say, for instance, if we had a season pass that allowed 2 guests on it, then there would obviously have to be more people in the group that had a season pass that could use their guest passes as well. Otherwise, they have to buy a daily pass, which most people's group rate for the daily pass was $3. Everybody said that the rental had to either be during the time that the beach was open, or if it was outside the beach time was open, lifeguard also had to be added to that fee. But they didn't have their lifeguard, like what that fee was on any of their sites.
Okay. All right, so does everybody understand what we're talking about right now, which is non-departmental beach usage? So basically beach usage that's outside of what the Parks Commission or the Recreation Department has planned. Things like a birthday party. I don't know if we've ever had a request for a birthday party, or we have had a couple of baptisms down there.
We had 1 birthday request this year.
Okay. So we had the past 2 years, maybe even more, we've had requests for baptisms down there, and they've always gone through the town manager to request it. She's always granted them permission. The problem is that they're always on Sunday mornings. We don't have staff. They've never required a lifeguard to be on duty. It's just it's to the point now where I've had to do it 2 years in a row, that we need to create some sort of policy so that we're all on the same page. When somebody asks to use the facility, it's clear on what our expectations are. Does anybody have any questions around this or any comments they want to make about beach usage?
Oh, I should add, half of them had it in their regular like field and facility use policies, and half of them had it as like a special beach grounds policy. But looking at their policies, they were pretty much like the same. Their facility policies and their beach policies were pretty much very similar. It's just a matter of where some of them had it.
Okay.
I think we cover our bases and put it in both. Do we have lifeguards that would be available at the times that, like typically speaking, on an annual basis, do we have lifeguards that would typically be available at the times we're talking about, where we've seen the trend of interest, with the baptisms or like a Sunday morning, things like that? Do we?
To be honest, Chris, no.
So I feel like that's something that would have to be mentioned to them ahead of time. And it would be something, a lot of the policies, it needed at least a minimum of a 2-week notice. A lot of times when we're getting them, it's like a 2-day notice if we're lucky. So a lot of them had a 2-week notice, and if that was the case, as soon as the date request came in, I could always reach out and say, okay, does anybody, if it happened to be during non-open hours, which most of them have been, I can reach out to all the guards on staff and say, okay, does anybody want to cover this, knowing that they're getting paid for it as well.
And I would suspect that if we're talking about during open hours for the beach, and this is a separate group, we may want a separate lifeguard catered to that group to not draw
Yeah.
attention away from, regular paying, beach members that are there as well.
Yeah, and that would have to be factored in as well.
And I think as
If
long as
it
the
could-
people are covering the cost of, what the lifeguards are getting paid, and obviously a Sunday thing is probably a time and a half sort of deal. We, as long as we're covering those costs, we're able to pay the lifeguards accordingly, I think we're fine.
So
So,
had,
well, Karen's son did the guild too, and I don't know if everyone recalls the guild dancers, but they used to have to rent the school facilities, and there was a hourly rate that we had to pay, and for using the facility, and that covered custodian, covered cleaning, covered someone to be there to watch it. And I think thinking of that way, just creating a policy that we know it will cover our extra costs would make sense. So that way we don't have to be on this negotiating thing or, the extra lifeguard or not. It's just a policy for use. If you're having a group event at the beach, this is how much it is. And we can always say that if there is a group event, we always will designate a lifeguard for that event. So kind of just simplifying it so that way it's easier to manage it. And we can say groups, it's groups of 9 or more, or pick a number. So that way it covers the cost of having that extra person.
But you may have to add a second lifeguard too, if we're talking, depending on the size of a group.
Right, that's what I'm saying is whenever there is a group request for a group event, it automatically goes, okay, it has to be a minimum of 9 and there will be a lifeguard. If a lifeguard cannot be arranged, we can't then do it.
Susanna, do you have anything you want to add to this? I think she's having just,
Seeing double.
Yeah,
I'm
we got you.
having- I'm
Voice.
having major tech issues, sorry. Am I coming through on 2 speakers too?
nope.
No,
No.
just
No,
one.
you're fine.
Okay, yeah, I would think that we'd have to have a lifeguard on duty no matter what, right?
Yes, that would
And
be,
so,
my thought.
so in
At
the
least
past-
one. Yeah, at least
Yeah.
one.
Right,
Yeah.
depending on the numbers. So I mean, in the past, you were saying you just used to let people in and stand there and wait for them or not even?
Sometimes I didn't, it really.
Yeah.
depends. I just find it, I don't, how do I say this so it comes across right? We charge a fee to use the beach, and we always have. When we've discussed not charging a fee, we've been sort of shot down and talked out of by town hall. Yet then they let people go out and use the beach with no lifeguard and no fee. I just think we need to be consistent across the board. And I think a lifeguard should not be optional. If they don't want us to, they have gates up for a reason. If they wanted people in that beach, there would be no gates. So I think between having lifeguards on duty and then just charging what it costs to have that event, even if it just covers the cost of the lifeguards.
Yeah.
I think that's worth it. And I think Kayla, I like the idea of a 2-week ahead of time request because I think it gives you the opportunity to see if we can find coverage for those hours.
Mhm.
If we can't, then we have to deny the request to do something. So I think that, and I'd like this, personally, I'm thinking something just its own separate policy / procedure, not sort of lumped in with any of the other field usage, only because it's got a lifeguard involved and it's got a couple of other moving pieces.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I would think we'd have to do a mandatory lifeguard, and it should just be one flat fee, and if you hit a certain number of people, then it's more than one lifeguard. Right?
and if you can
With
pull
an
off,
increase, yeah, with an increased price.
With an increased fee,
Yeah.
correct, right?
and if you can pull off a birthday party or another small event during our regular open hours, I'm fine with that. And I can see who's in here. If there's anybody, we have one member of the public here. If you want to chime in, feel free to unmute yourself, Jared, and be part of the conversation. I know this is sort of your venue. You know, I'm fine with it as long as we're within our capacity of doing something during the day, during our open hours, you know, birthday party wise or whatever. The more we can bring people into our facilities, the more worth they have to the folks that live here. And I think that's important. So, all right. So Kayla, can you work on something for next time and maybe make some recommendations on pricing?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we
Um,
have any other
Turn
additional
to comments.
costs associated with opening the beach for somebody? Like, is there a custodial cost? Is it carry in, carry out in terms of trash?
So
Uh,
the beach is supposed to be, well, COVID is different, but it's carry in, carry out. And if they were to use, like this year, the beach house wasn't open except for restrooms, so people didn't enter or exit through there. But if that was open to the public, we would have, and it was not, and they rented it not during normal hours, it could be the additional light cost, it could be the restroom, like supply costs, So basically, I'm just going to base it off of the highest paid lifeguard, because that's the only way that I'll know that whoever picks up that,
Yeah.
shift per se
It's
would
covered.
be covered. So I'd have to base it off of the highest paid lifeguard, and then just general expenses, assuming that everything would be, that they'd be using the restrooms if it was open, that type of thing. And if it's COVID time still, then it can be adjusted.
Yeah, best case scenario for them, it's less money, but it
Right.
won't be more money
Right.
going. So this is the highest it's going to cost you. Yeah, we just want to set that secondary lifeguard fee or whatever the number is to
Yeah. And I would say regardless if it's during normal operating hours or not, they need a certificate of liability.
all right. So we have Jared Bowser on. He's the young man who just came on video. Jared, if you want to unmute yourself, I can probably figure out how to raise your hand. For
Nope,
those
I figured it out.
Awesome. For those people who don't know Jared, he's been a lifeguard at our town beach for the last 2 years. And he lives in Lunenburg. And what are you thinking, Jared? What are your
So, one thought I do have, and I know the odds of it are very unlikely, but one thing that needs to be remembered is because of the size of the beach, you can't have too many events at once. I don't think it would happen, but if someone wants to have a birthday party and a baptism at the same time, there really isn't enough room if the general public's also allowed. So
Okay.
that might be something to consider of how many at once or how long or something like that.
Okay. Perfect. You didn't put your hand down. Let me lower your hand. What, in terms of Sunday availability, Jared, say you were asked to do a Sunday morning, do you think that's something that lifeguards would be interested in if it was an off-hour event?
I believe it would. I can't speak for every lifeguard that's come to the beach or could come to the beach, but I feel like there would be, at least one person who probably would.
Okay, awesome. All right, so Kayla, if you could work on some sort of policy of some sort that would sort of cover most, if not all, of what we talked about tonight, throw some prices in there.
Yep.
And-
I'll build off one that I have, and
Okay,
I'll make sure that it's its own separate policy.
Perfect. And then we. can-
Karen, two quick comments before you
yes.
move on. I totally agree with having a dedicated lifeguard for an event happening, whether it's during normal hours or after hours. I think that, as has been discussed, that helps with the fairness of pricing. And also, I think you need that for liability reasons. You're going to have a group that's going to need an extra eye watching them, and you can't pull someone away from the public part of the beach or the members there. The other thing is just to mention to Kayla, and this speaks to, actually, I want to ask a question first. The non-departmental beach definition, is that Parks Department, or is that all town departments? I'm thinking of the library and its cardboard boat race. They're
So-
the sponsors of that race.
Nope, not anymore. So,
Okay.
first of all, that's my word. I put that word out there, non-departmental. So don't really know what it means other than I was just thinking things that weren't directly tied to us. The cardboard boat race has been run by us for the last 3 or 4 years. When Karen Kemp retired, we took it under our wing. So it's been run by Jen Knapp at the town beach as the coordinator for the last few years.
Okay.
that's
That I was not aware of, so that's fine.
Yeah, as of right now, I don't know of anybody else within the town of, any other department in the town of Lunenburg that's requested to use the facility. We could certainly do something separate for that if we had to.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that keep it in the back of your mind as you're putting together the policy and think how that would affect some other town entity that might approach us for use of the beach and the lake for an event.
Okay. Thank
Thanks.
you. All right, so Kayla's on that one. Anna Lockwood is making a list. That's her job.
I am.
Making a list. Oh, now she's looking for her paper. She's really good at keeping me on task. She's got the to-do list. All right, so we will circle back to that one next meeting. The next one is, I have it listed as hunting on town property. I don't know if that's the right word, if we just need to be thinking of it more as the use of guns, rifles, any sort of weapon on town property, bow and arrow, on Parks Commission property. But that is our next agenda item, and that came up, as I mentioned last meeting, because Conservation Commission is taking this up. And because of that discussion, we had somebody contact us to see if it's something that would be allowed on our property. And since we have no policy on it, it's made its way to our agenda. Does anybody have strong feelings in one direction or another? Any thoughts that they want to put forward?
I would say no hunting of any kind, regardless of weapon type, on parks properties. Just, I think it falls outside the purview of public use and potential danger and liability and so forth.
The one thing that I will add to it is that, I think David Passios mentioned last time, you could have someone practice, bow and arrow, target shooting, or however you say it. So I think it needs to be, I am against, but I think the policy should be to include any kind of discharge of any type of weapon.
I'm in agreement. That's why I was sort of like, oh, is hunting the word that I really wanted to use?
Yeah, if there was an archery summer program at Marshall Park, I think it's a different deal. It's an organized activity.
Right.
I don't wanna-
Could be used, but we're not, what we're not going to allow would be bow and arrow, crossbows, any sort of firearm, for the purposes of hunting or recreation outside of an official park program.
Yes.
Like
Agree with
I
that.
wouldn't even truthfully want, I wouldn't want to see someone just decide like, hey, I'm going to go use Marshall Park to practice my archery today.
Right.
And set up a bay of hail at the other end of the baseball diamond and start, you know,
Exactly.
I think
That-
anything outside of an official parks program, you know, then we're,
Yep, I agree
Covered.
with that.
Does anybody disagree with not allowing the discharge of firearms or weapons of any kind on parks? That would sort of help me guide this discussion a little bit better, I guess. All right, so in terms of creating a policy on this, the question then would be, how do we want said policy to read? If you had asked me before I made the comment about is hunting the right word, and then Chris's input on archery on the Marshall Park Diamonds, I would have said something like, no hunting of any kind allowed on any property under the care and control of the Parks Commission. But I think it should probably include no hunting or discharge of firearms. Somebody help me.
I don't know what the proper term is for a bow and arrow. Archery is on the school signs. There's no archery allowed on school grounds either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no skateboarding, no archery. Yeah, I don't know what the proper term is for.
How about a general category of lethal weapon?
So the problem with that is a lethal weapon could almost be considered anything, Dave, right? I mean, it could be considered a baseball.
Bat.
Yeah, but you're
Oh.
not discharging it, you're throwing it. I don't know. I don't totally disagree with your questioning of that. I'm just trying to come up with a wording that covers everything.
Could
You
town
know,
council?
as most of us have probably, or some of us have probably heard of the discussions about this subject over the past few weeks, we cannot disallow carrying of firearms on the properties. We cannot do that, but we can block hunting, and with the correct wording, we can block the discharge of bow and arrows and I'm not sure exactly how to word that properly.
That's the use of any of the implements we're talking about. So, I mean, we'd be covered just.
This is, I pulled up the town, I literally just did a Google search, so this is the first thing that came up. I'm on the town of Boxford. No person shall fire or discharge any handgun, rifle, shotgun, or any other device or weapon within limits of any park, playground, school, or other town property, except with the consent of the Board of Selectmen. We have something like that. I believe the town of Lunenburg it's definitely discharge of a firearm. It has to get permission from Board of Selectmen, but if we create a policy that says we don't want it on our parks, they can't, I don't believe they can override that. But I'm just looking for terminology. Yeah.
We're probably safe saying discharge of any weapon. To Dave's point, that wouldn't then include a baseball bat.
The reality is we can always go back and edit if we have to. We can always go back. You can always go back and update in a policy. So if we create something that doesn't, if somebody asked a question about town council, do we want to write something up, and before we vote on it, do you want me to run it by him?
I think that would make sense, just so we don't have to revote it or rescind and revote.
So what about something like no hunting or discharge of, do you want to do it as firearms or weapons or both?
Both maybe, and then it just kind of adds more of that. Not only are we just talking about guns.
So no hunting or discharge of firearms or weapons on parks, on properties that come under the care and control of the Park Commission?
Yep, sounds good.
Unless officially sanctioned by a parks program.
Okay, hold on one second. Yeah. unless, what was that one, Chris? Unless,
Maybe something like unless officially sanctioned by a parks, an official parks program.
unless sanctioned, unless a recreation department sanctioned activity.
Sure.
or Program.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Um, Okay, so what I'll do is, because I feel like kicking the can on this down the road to a third meeting, let me go ahead and send this over to town council to see if, I'll just have them verify that that sounds right. And I can also look to see if there's another way that we need to list something in there. And I'll let you know what he says. on the next
Should
meeting.
we vote on our decision to not allow it and then vote a second time about the write-up? Just so we feel like we check that off a little bit on the agenda.
I personally, let me just check one thing, Chris. We're out of hunting season, are we not right now? What are we in? What's today's date? January 11th. We're in crow hunting season. Don't laugh, Dave. I go out on a daily basis looking for my crows.
I bet you do. I can think of a couple of campgrounds that I've stayed at that I wish I could hunt them from my campsite. Wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning in the summer.
So
Yeah, I think it's crow. Yeah.
we're in crow hunting and then trapping season for muskrat, possum, raccoon, and skunk.
Do we have to include, should we include that aspect, I guess, trapping?
That's what I was, as I'm looking at this, that's what I'm thinking too, which is another good reason why this needs to be continued to a third meeting, because if we add trapping in there, that's not how I listed it on the agenda. I'm fine adding, does anybody object to adding trapping in there?
No,
Not at all.
All right, let me
I
work.
think we should mention anything that we're thinking of at this point, only in that it may garner some comment from the public at our next meeting. So if there's any other categories that we think we're going to add, we should try to bring them up now so that if there's going to be anybody from the public that wants to comment about it, they'll be at our next meeting.
Okay, so I'm thinking definitely hunting. Well, we can add trapping to it. Recreational discharge of firearms and weapons. Like we don't want an archery practice going on at Marshall Park or any park for that matter. We don't want anybody out there practicing their slingshot because that's actually part of hunting is using a slingshot.
If I'm looking at this correctly too, I think we're in rabbit, hare, and squirrel season right now as well.
Off of my page, Chris. We are. We definitely are.
Actually, not squirrel, just rabbit and hare.
All right, so it's up to you guys whether or not you think we should just at this point say straight out no hunting and then go back and fine tune a policy for the next meeting, or we just wait and do the whole policy in one meeting in February.
If we're adding trapping, then maybe we need to table it to allow for public discussion.
Is that fine with everybody?
sure.
Good on this, my part.
Excellent. Great. We just tabled that to our third meeting. Thanks a lot, Chris Sullivan. You were supposed to keep us on track. All right. The next one is Marshall Track Surface Renovation, Spring 2021. Dave Passios, you're on.
Yeah, that was my entry. Unfortunately, I haven't connected with Rob yet to talk about this. So I'm going to need him, I believe, or we're going to need him on board with this before we can really start planning anything. Also, based on the water table at Marshall Park and the fact that Marshall does not drain, this says spring 2021, but it may be late spring or early summer before the track is really workable enough to do what needs to be done to it to bring the surface back to a nice smooth black surface like it used to have. My game plan is that I did a test patch on part of the track before the snows started, and basically cleaned with a rake, scraped a little bit of the organic matter off the surface, and then rototilled about 3 inches deep into the cinders. And then I didn't have a good roller, but I drove over it to pack it back down. And it looked pretty good until we had a lot of rain and freeze thaw cycles, which, form the ice crystals that pushes the ground up. I don't remember the track doing that back when it was maintained on a regular basis. And I think that's because it was compacted and the water didn't stand in the cinders. But that's what I would propose, that we work towards late spring or early summer next year. And part of the organic matter removal could be part of the possible volunteer cleanup day that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So basically what needs to happen is we take some of the organic matter and grass that's grown on the surface and scrape that surface and pile that stuff off to the side somewhere for some future use. I have had a volunteer with the right piece of equipment volunteer to bring his equipment onto the track and till it. The entire track he's willing to do. And then we would just have to make arrangements for dragging to level it and roll it. The roller is the original roller that was used to maintain the track is actually still there. And I couldn't pull it by hand because it's just too darn heavy and it's sunk in the ground a little bit, but the axle still turns. So there's potential for pulling that with a garden tractor, or what would make more sense would be to enlist the help of a contractor who has a larger powered roller that we could roll the surface and get it back down flat. I think if we do that once in 2021, take a look and see how it holds up through the year, and then see if we want to do anything additional in 2022. And that would bring that track back to its original condition with the cinder surface, which if you can get the fine organic material out of it, even when it's wet, it's not muddy. It's kind of like walking on a fine gravel surface. So that's my vision. And like I say, I haven't had a chance to talk with the DPW director to make sure he'd be on board with something like that. And, there would be a few hoops to jump through to have a private contractor do that work. But I'm sure.
In the next for the next meeting or so, somewhere in the next.
Yeah,
meeting.
I'll make a point to connect with Rob. I actually missed his message on a day that I was available, and we just haven't connected since then.
Perfect. All right. So I'm excited for you to come back with information on that. I think it would be a nice addition to be able to walk down there at the cinder. I think it's a cinder track down at in Fitchburg at is it Crocker? No, that's not Crocker. Whatever the one is right down off John Fitch. It's all Coolidge. Thank you. It's always being walked. I think it would be a good addition.
The other thing too that I'd like to bring up while we're talking about the track, and I think it's appropriate to bring it up at this time. I don't want to take any action on it, but I want the commission to be thinking about the no dogs policy in regards to the track. Because if we're going to take the time to get this track back to its as close as we can to its original condition and encourage people to walk it, they're going to want to be able to walk it with their dogs. I personally don't see a problem with opening the track only to dog walking and somehow make it very clear that the dogs are not allowed on the grass area or the ball field areas inside of the track or the other two fields. But that's a subject for another day.
You can certainly do that. It's not a problem. All right. All right, so then, I don't know why I separated these. Unless anybody disagrees, can we just jump down to the volunteer cleanup day for a second? Um, the park commission has actually discussed this previously. Really didn't go anywhere with it because I just don't think that there was enough of us to make it happen. So this was Dave asked for this agenda item. I think it's a great idea. So Dave, you're thinking just a single day?
Well, actually, I was thinking multiple days, to tell you the truth, and the reason being that what I'd like to do is ask the Little League and some of the other entities that use the fields to come up with a list of things that could be done in one day by a volunteer group, small projects that they see would be beneficial to their use of the fields, as well as things that we as commissioners see that could be done. I picture this as a non-motorized type of cleanup. Although if Rob was willing to have a DBW machine over there for if we needed it for a certain use. But I think it complicates things when we start talking about power tools and equipment. Just a simple rakes, shovels, and wheelbarrows type of cleanup day and schedule, and I'm not sure what's appropriate. I was thinking in the back of my mind 3 different days and target 3 different parks, 1 on each day. That may be a huge undertaking, but that's my thought process.
I don't think that it is, because the Little League, to some extent, has done like a field cleanup day
Mhm.
where they've just done it themselves as a group. And my feeling is if they're able to pull it off, then we should be able to pull it off as well.
Right.
I like that idea. I don't know if anybody else agrees, but I think this is where we all live. I think when you volunteer where you live, it's meaningful to be able to say, I went to that park and I repaired something, or I cleaned up trash or whatever. Especially for kids, I think that's adds value to, their community and what they think of their community.
Right. And I think it's going to be important to identify small projects that we're targeting for those days and not just say, okay, come and rake leaves or come and do this or that. Have specific small projects that can be completed. And like you said, it will give the kids and families that participate a feeling of accomplishment that they actually did this project on this day and completed it. Whether it's cut the growth and pull down the growth in the fence at the old basketball court or something like that. Specific projects that we've targeted for those days.
Do you see anything that doesn't look like it would be doable in terms of a cleanup day, or 3 or 10?
I think we should be able to get it done. I see in the agenda like Earth Day is April 22nd. I don't know if we target kind of a kickoff around that if winter, spring cooperates.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a good kind of kickoff sort of deal, like the weekend that follows that or something.
Yeah. As I stated earlier, I think Marshall tends to be problematic early in the spring, unless you pick specific projects in dry areas, and there aren't many of those at Marshall except for maybe the basketball courts. The other parks, though, I, in the back of my mind, think that they dry out much sooner. I could be wrong, and anybody that knows could correct me. But the earlier dates might be better spent in Whalum and down at Shirley Reservoir and maybe one other location, but I'll let Marshall wait a little bit longer and allow it to dry out.
So unless somebody disagrees, in all of Kayla's free time, and I'm happy to help, and I know whoever else wants to help, we can start we can even just start with contacting the Little League. They're our primary users of those fields, and see if there's any projects that they have. And, you know, we just did the big walkthrough of Marshall, so we have an idea of what needs to be done at Marshall, but we can certainly, you know, again, in all of Kayla's free time, see if she has some time to walk some of the other parks to see if she can come up with a list of ideas of little things that can get done in a day. And to sort of piggyback off of this volunteer day, in the last few days, I've had a conversation with the chair of the Conservation Commission, and we were having a discussion on trails. And I asked how difficult trails were to create, because we have that big piece of that big parcel over off of Northfield Road. That, as far as I know, we have no plans for any immediate use of that. You know, could at some point we entertain putting in some trails, at least trails to walk the perimeter of that? That would be a nice big long loop. It would tie into other parcels owned by the town. And he said that the majority, if not all, of the trailways that were created in Lunenburg were actually done by volunteers. So maybe we can get something going and, you know, use some of those people who want to continue to help to create some stuff like that too. I think that'd be a neat thing to do, to tie in, to be able to say, yeah, we have walking trails on parks properties, just the same way conservation does. And it all ties in together up there. It also will eventually tie into Bright Farms, which is that lettuce. Our land will abut them. So anyway, all right, we'll work on that. Thank you, Dave, for that idea.
I think we'd want, when we're doing this
Yeah.
thing, I think we'd want to just make sure we're identifying things. I know we're talking about small projects, but I think the general sort of cleanup, sort of emphasizing that as well as like a family participation sort of deal, where some, you know, a family can come down and, you know, pick up trash, or, you know, that sort of deal, as a kind of a general sort of participation, as opposed to being intimidated by a particular project, possibly. Not that we're talking about great scale. And Dave, I think you're on point too, with kind of lack of power tools and so forth. I think we get into some, you know, let's leave the chainsaws at home.
I agree. And I know at one point, when we brought this up years ago, Parks was actually discussing on whether or not we would sponsor a townwide cleanup where people could go out and just clean up the sides of their road. And then at the time, it was Jack who was the DPW director, and he was basically said, if you guys organize it and people collect trash, I'll dispose of it for them. We'll figure out the best way to do it and dispose of it. So we may be able to build something bigger off of.
They were providing bags too, right? Didn't they provide?
Yeah, they did.
bags too, right? Yeah.
So, all righty, let's go back up to discussion on parks properties, improvements and planning, including continued discussion on Marshall Park Master Plan. All right, so you guys will hear this from me 1,000 times. I have no clue what I'm doing when it comes to this master plan. I've never created one. So I went and sat with Kayla and got some great information from her. We are still at the very beginning of the timeline of this. And Dave's here to be able to chime in for capital planning. Capital planning ranked this project 15 of 22, Dave? Or 13 of 22?
I believe it ended up at 13, but I don't have that stuff in front of me right now.
So I'm pretty sure it was 13. We could have been 15 numbered projects they number their projects in order of what they feel is the most important. So right now, we will not make the cut based on the amount of money that is in the capital budget for this year. Doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means that as of right now, where they drew the line is not at number 13. But here nor there, whether we have funding coming or not, we need to move forward on what we think we want to see down there so that we can get some community input, so that we can then have this information ready to go when we do get the funding, whether through capital planning or grants or some other magical ways. So we want to be ahead of the 8 ball, not behind it. So right now, we need to be using this time to get ahead of it. So in looking at, I know I forwarded it to Anna today, but has everybody received that list from Kayla with the list of Marshall Park priorities?
The list we all created, right? That's the one you're,
That's,
yeah.
yep, the one that we all created, and then she had put the like ones up at the top, and then the rest of them that were like single ideas at the bottom.
A couple months ago.
Well, I don't know if it was a couple months ago, but I don't know the time, something like
I think
that.
it has been a couple months already, yes.
Don't.
Yes.
I don't know
You got it
whether-
November 9th, I think it looks like is when it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, time flies when you're having weird fun, I guess. Do you want it again, Susanna? I can send it to you.
No, I can dig it out.
Okay, so the 5 that came out on top were the track, multi-purpose court for basketball, pickleball, tennis, etc., access to the pond, parking and repairing the fencing in existing areas, and some sort of picnic area or pavilion. So those are the things we all had in common. And then there's about 21 other things we didn't have in common. So I'm thinking that nobody has the list in front of them other than me. That's
I
what
have
I'm,
it.
I could be wrong as I'm going to say this. So I guess I'm wondering what anybody, as people look through that list of the ideas, if there's anything that is standing out to you to say, wow, I can't believe that's still under the ideas and nobody else thought of that. We really should be considering this. That's my first thought. My second thought is trying to come up with the idea of how we want to engage the community to get their opinions on this. So do you like my direction? It's really no direction. It's just sort of there.
So what, I guess one of the things that I would approach, and it's really the topic of our next meeting, I think, but I think pretty well there's a consensus that if there's a skate park in town, it should be in Marshall Park. So that may
Yep,
move up.
that would definitely move that up.
The other one that I'm a big proponent of, I think, is the dog park. Try to some sort of fenced area for dogs, and if we put in trails or something around the perimeter, maybe we tie that in, somewhere along the route, along the kind of the outer perimeter of trails and so forth. But I think there really isn't a spot for people to, like a designated spot in town for people to take dogs. And consequently, I think people tend to walk them in the cemeteries. And I know that's been an issue with the cemetery commission and so forth, that not everyone picks up after their animals. So if we can maybe alleviate some of that and have a space.
Yep.
One of the things that we need to make sure, and we'll have a little bit better knowledge after this winter, is that we make sure that we plan on an appropriate area for the ice skating rink to be set up. I don't remember if I've mentioned it in meetings or if it was just some information I passed on to Karen. Up in Jefferson, New Hampshire, right in the center of town, turns out there's an association. I thought it was run by the town, but there's a private association that has an area that is paved with a 5-inch berm all the way around it. And I wasn't aware until I saw a picture of them setting up the rink. They actually set up a formal rink with short walls and plastic and everything on that paved area and flood it. And they've had a couple of meltdowns over the past 2 or 3 weeks, but it's up and functioning right now because it's been really cold up there. But if we have work in a space large enough for whatever rink size we're working with, or if we find we want to expand it, I see it as a multi-use area if it's designed properly so that it's used as the ice rink area in the wintertime, but then identify other uses for that same area outside of winter, whether it be for a kid's learn to ride, safe area for bicycling, whatever that use would be. Is Kayla still with us?
Yeah, everyone's still
Yeah,
on.
she is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just wondering what the size of that rink is that's on order.
Sorry, I had to get one of my kids off the top of my couch.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Um,
Added.
hold on 1 second and let me just find it so I can give you the correct.
Is there,
measurement.
speaking, you're talking about ice skating. So, I mean, is it feasible to get skating back to Marshall Pond
So
Well,
I,
as part of a master plan?
yeah,
ahead.
so I've asked that in the past. Part of the problem, Chris, is it's just the overall safety when you're on a pond ice versus rink ice.
Yeah.
Because somebody's got to be diligent about going out there and checking it constantly.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be a minimum of 4 inches, and
Right.
I think that would be their least desired thing to have to do safety wise.
hmm Yeah.
But we can certainly, because there used to be lights over there. It used to
Yeah,
be-
that's what you'd say. Yeah.
I have a neighbor who took his kids down to Lancaster this past weekend, and down there along Route 117 on the right. I'm sure many people have been seeing that area down there. There's actually a small pond that they used to do snowmobile races down across the grass and see how far they could get across the pond before they sank. But anyway, with all the wet weather we've had, there were some low spots in the field that were flooded, and they were able to skate on areas where there was no grass sticking up through. But one or both of the kids wandered off to the side where grass was still coming up through the ice, and they went through on that this past weekend, up a little over their ankles. But again, you're looking at an area that's no more than 12 to 16 inches deep with a solid bottom. You're not going to sink in the mud underneath. With the skating rink that we're talking about, it's a matter of inches that you're dealing with, so you're never going to fall through.
So the rink that's ordered is 25 by 50. And that can be shortened or expanded. We just would have to buy an expansion kit.
Right. Okay. I have obviously not been up to Jefferson since winter set in, and I'm not sure exactly how big the rink is in comparison to the paved area, but their paved area was at least 75 feet by 125 feet. And as they were setting up, it looked like it used the entire width, but I'm not sure about the entire length. And they actually, because they don't have town water up there, they actually have a well drilled 10 feet off of the ice rink that they pump water out of to flood it. But I mean, it could be designed as a space that's used year round for different activities, obviously ice skating in the wintertime, but other uses in the spring, summer, and fall.
That could be something that could be built right into the pavilion kind of picnic area sort of deal.
Yep.
So if you put I don't know, you could in the wintertime, you could put a fire pit over there during the day or something. I don't know. Maybe liability again there with fire, but somebody keep warm, toast marshmallows.
I wonder about horseshoe pits also. That came to mind a couple of weeks ago.
I thought of that, too, but I didn't. It was after this came in.
Yeah.
So I guess my thought is also in trying to figure out the true need of what our Little League program has. Because when we talk about this, some of the things that are down on the ideas, because they were single ideas from people, were a multi-purpose field, and then somebody else had reduced baseball fields or make them more adjustable. To me, that sort of goes hand in hand. So we talk about Marshall and we're focused on Marshall, but if we look at the big picture right now, we've got a field over at McNally, we have 2 fields over at Fitzgerald, and then we have 4 fields over at Marshall Park. And I don't know what the true need of the program is, because the last time we checked, their numbers had, and this was pre-COVID, their numbers had fallen because we've picked up more spring sports like lacrosse, and kids are gravitating towards that, and I think moving away to some extent from baseball. So I think it would be beneficial to the commission to sort of understand better what the Little League needs are. Can we get rid of one of those fields? I don't mean get rid of, meaning they have to get rid of one of their age programs, but could the T-ball program utilize one of the other fields that we have, say over at Fitzgerald Field? Can that happen? It'd be nice to have an understanding of what they need, because I think if we were looking at this, knowing that, and having them say, no, we don't need 4 fields over there, we need this, and maybe this, it could leave us with a bigger area to say, oh, we could probably put something else in there. So maybe something should be moved up off of the idea to a priority list. And my second thought on that is trying to take this list somehow and create a more of a condensed list, more of a specific, what we definitely think we want, 12 to 15 items, and then somehow poll our community. If we were to poll them right now, it would be very open-ended, and I would fear that we'd get a million different responses, and we wouldn't be able to make sense of all of them or figure out how to make them all work. So I was thinking something like, here's the thoughts of the Parks Commission. What are your thoughts on these? How would you rank them? Kayla's suggestion was, how would they rank them? But then also not wanting to cut out their opinion, have a spot where they could write another idea in there. So open-ended to some extent, but guided in another sense. I don't know.
I could
what
see that.
anyone-
Yeah, I wouldn't leave it entire. Yeah, I think a little bit open-ended, so that, because perhaps there's something we're not thinking about that is a great idea.
And the thing I hear in that also is that it may be something that somebody comes up with that could be joined in with a group of activities, as we talked about earlier, maybe in the pavilion area, that would tie into horseshoes and an activity that needs a small area, but could be grouped into that larger area to make it more usable and desirable as a destination for daytime activities.
I'm looking at the list here, and it looks like a few of the ideas could be lumped together. Like access to the pond could also have the pocket park at the pond and the connection to town center walking trails. Could that all be one entity,
Right.
instead of having all these items?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming the pocket park is a picnic table and a bench or something to that effect, or a couple of picnic tables.
Where was the
Yep.
connecting?
That's number 1 under ideas. Nature trail, walking trails, connection to town center. Right?
Yep.
They were clearing a few trees out there today, Dave, near where the pocket park could go.
Why
On
would it-
his land, not the town land, but on,
Thank you for freaking me out. I am.
yeah, not just
Yeah,
up
no.
just up a hair where it abuts, comes pretty
Yeah,
close
they,
probably to
they had a
abutting.
number of trees come down over the past year or so. And I don't know if they were taking additional trees down, but there were some that needed to come down before they fall down.
Yeah.
So that makes total sense. I actually had a conversation with the former chair of the Conservation Commission about that little spot there on the corner of Chestnut, Marshall Pond, excuse me. And, no commitment, but he didn't see a serious problem with a little bit of cleanup, impact the water of the wetland area as little as possible, but, clean up the ground areas, some trimming of branches and trees, and maybe removal of a few trees. on the drier, higher ground, and then throw a few picnic tables in there. And I think in some of our discussions over time, we've talked about, or actually I asked about the ADA compliant picnic tables. And if the ones we already own aren't being used in an area where they're getting use, that would be a perfect place to put probably 2 of them.
I was actually about to say, I think very well intentioned, I think, when the picnic tables went in over at the town beach, but I'm not sure they get much, if any, use. So there probably is the opportunity to borrow from the beach and move something over to there. I personally think that the doing a pocket park at Marshall, when I look at the town as a whole and I think of what we have for all of our different age groups, I think one of the big things that we're missing is recreational type activities, even if no matter how passive they are, for some of the older groups. And I think that just being in proximity to the senior center, if there were picnic tables there, I think we'd see some folks out walking from the senior center over to Marshall Park to have lunch or, things like that. So I personally, I don't know if that was my idea or not. I don't really remember.
I think in conjunction with that too, looking at that as I drive by it almost every weekend, in conjunction with that, I think I'd like to see a picnic table on the dog pound side of the pond. Also, there's a spot there that could be leveled enough for for a single picnic table. And again, a nice place to walk to, sit, overlook the pond, maybe have a snack or a lunch, and then walk back to wherever you came from.
Is the dog pound the dog actually it's the animal pound, I guess, wasn't.
And yeah,
dog.
right.
Yeah.
I've always called it that.
Yeah, is that part of the pound itself, part of the parks? Or is it part of the little piece of property?
Yeah, I've looked at that a dozen times on the assessor's maps, and I don't remember if it's separated out.
I'm gonna look right now.
Okay, that'd be great.
Because
Yeah,
I think
go ahead, Ann.
once we talked about on that meeting that I actually attended at DPW a couple of years ago, we talked about maybe putting the picnic table across from the pound because there is a little space just off of, and there is parking there of the sidewalk that it's town land. And that part I know it's town land.
Yeah, that's where our vision of the major piece of the pocket park would be. But I just, as I say, going by there quite often, it just looks like a natural spot that you could, in fact, I think years ago, to tell you the truth, I think there was a picnic table at the end of the parking lot on the town pound side.
Yeah. The one thing I have made this comment a little bit. When I look at this list of projects, I think, there's some there, it's a build out. But it seems like some others like repair fencing, that's part of maintenance and we have a budget for that.
I totally agree.
And, there's some other things of that nature here that, and well, the other thing is like you're talking about the picnic table. We didn't need to have a master plan to put picnic tables at the town beach. There was funds for that because it's not a big number. Why can we just say we would like the same action we took to put at the picnic table at town beach? Why can we take the same action to put a picnic table in that corner there? I mean, it's not a big project. It's just a picnic table in an area that's owned by the town.
I totally agree.
I totally agree. Yeah.
While I'm thinking
the
of
term-
it too, go ahead, Susanna, then I'll get back
Just
to you.
the term pocket park makes it sound like more than it is. If we're talking about clearing some brush and putting a picnic table or two and a bench or two, it isn't a pocket park. just that language might scare some financing away or something,
Right.
or make it seem more intimidating than it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we have.
It's not a park, it's just benches.
Yeah, and it's owned by the, it's managed or owned by the Parks Commission. And just as we put a picnic table at Town Beach, why can't we just put a picnic table there? What's stopping us from doing that? And what took to do the picnic tables at Town Beach?
The town, so just the really quick history on that picnic table. In some of the other stuff that went down there, it's literally like a week before the end of the fiscal year. I don't remember what year it was. DPW director came and said, I have X amount of money left, I need to spend it. And that's how it got done. Like it was one of those.
So, yeah, so it's not we don't need to make that part of our master plan. We can, and we have that other fund that it's from our fees that I think that's the one that's $30,000 now. We can make a, vote that we would like to have 2 picnic tables purchased and place it on that location.
I agree.
So what it will take us to do that?
Telling Kayla to make it happen.
Yeah.
Just
so,
like we did with the ice skating, right? The ice skating.
Yeah, so I can tell you, I'm actually the one that ordered the picnic tables for the beach because we had extra funds at the time and it was at the end of the year. And knowing what is in the revolving now and knowing what is in some of the line item accounts and things like that, and knowing how much those 3, I think it was 3 that I ordered, I'd have to look back, picnic tables cost, I don't see why it's not possible. I was just going to jump in. I don't want to be the bad guy, but in conservation of time, I think it might be best because everybody has more ideas and things like that. I think it might be best, like Karen had said, for everybody to kind of take that list and maybe re-look at that list and kind of rank them on their own now that, so you see everybody's ideas on the paper now, whether they were common ideas or not, and list out kind of your priorities. And like you say, the pocket park might not even be, well, not a pocket park, but might not even be part of the master plan now because we've identified things that we can probably purchase without capital planning or grants or things like that. It's something that we could purchase through the revolving or through our line item. So I think that everybody should kind of take a look at that list and then, evaluate it on their scale and kind of send it back to me before the next meeting, like a week before the next meeting, so I have time. And I can kind of look at how everybody kind of rated them and put it all together for the most part and send it back out to you guys. So you can kind of do the same thing you're doing now. Because like Karen had said, we are in the beginning stages, and the more that the commission knows their direction that they want to go in, they're going to understand the community's input. Like Chris said, we don't want it so close-ended that people aren't going to give us good ideas, but at the same time, we don't want it so open-ended that we're going to be sitting in the same position a year from now because we just can't narrow down everything that may not necessarily be a need, but it's a want by several different people in the community. So I just think
Kayla, I think we were talking about something different. We were talking about everything you said, by the way, I agree. But we are talking about something apart from the grand vision of Marshall Park. We're talking about there are certain things that is a list and it should not be part of the master plan. It should just be part of what we do.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So now everybody looks at that list and you're identifying things that don't need to be part of the master plan. So that list were items that everybody wanted as part of the master plan and everything like that. Well, now you're identifying things that don't need to be part of the master plan. So you can now rank that list, and if it's not in the number of there, you can put it a comment on the side. This doesn't need to be part of the master plan. And I understand that there's a lot of other things, but just in kind of redirecting, because I have to hop off of here at 8:30, but I want to be part of the meeting as best as I can. So just kind of making sure that we're staying on track with not only the agenda item, but the master plan idea and the parks properties in general. So I fully understand picnic tables don't need to be part of the master plan. And now that everybody's seeing it on the list, that can be taken off. And if somebody else had a better idea, maybe that can now be ranked because we pulled an item off. And that's kind of how the whole master plan process is going to be for a project this big.
So my request is, and that's going off of what I think both of you and Anna are saying is, Anna, there's more than just and I think we all agree with you on the pocket park. There's other things on here like the signage on Chestnut Street. That doesn't have to be part of a master plan. And it's something that needs to be done or probably should be done. So I guess it would be my request of you guys at this point is to take this list again. And now let's literally go through it again. Go through there, look at all of those Marshall Park ideas, rank them in the way you think it's important, and let's compare notes again, but have a section of things that don't belong in the master plan for Marshall Park, like the pocket park, like the signage on Chestnut Street. I'm sure there's might be another one in there.
I think like Susanna said, there's a lot of things that can be combined.
Yeah.
You know, like so we have like the basketball court scenario and then visibility to the courts. So obviously that would be part of the same thing.
Yep.
You know, there's 3 different things that say multi-purpose field.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so we can combine a lot of this and really whittle it down.
There's things that are gonna have to just come out. It's not gonna be master plan related. It's just gonna be just general parks related. We want to get this done. And then there's going to be other things that are going to need to be part of the bigger master plan. Nobody here has a direct line to the Little League. Am I correct? Like Chris,
I
you're not a
don't.
Little League person, right?
No.
Right.
And reach out to them as far as field needs. It's not a problem.
Do you want to do, yeah, do you want to do that or do you want me to take care of it with Steve?
Either way, it doesn't matter. I can take care of it.
Okay, I'll let you do it. I'll let you run with it.
Karen, before you give Kayla too many added things, I'd like to bring up a subject, and Kayla is probably going to be the best one to approach Rob about it. And that is that at some point in this process, probably as part of the funding for the master plan, I truly believe that there's going to need to be a complete and thorough survey of the property and mark the boundaries so that we know that we're on town property and not doing something on a neighboring property, or vice versa, that there hasn't been infringement. And I do have some current concerns along the Chestnut Street side, but there's no way of knowing until we get the boundaries marked. But I'm wondering, and Rob would, I believe, be able to come up with the answer probably very quickly, if we could inexpensively have something similar to what they do for properties when they're refinancing or actually being financed by the bank. And that's like a tape survey, and just do a basic flagging of the property lines as best as can be determined without a formal survey. Because the formal survey for 28 acres with as sophisticated as the property lines are for this property, it's going to be a pretty big number. The pocket park especially, we're going to need to know what our limits are so that we don't go onto the private property that's there, and we're going to need to communicate with that property owner also before we get too far into this.
Yeah, I can talk to Rob about that.
Great, thank you.
And we do, just so you know, Dave, we do have, it sort of is on the list of a full property survey needing to be done.
Yep, okay.
Whole slew of reasons as well. Before we move off of this, I just want to circle back to a comment that Chris had made about the skate park. So we do have the skate park on our agenda for a standalone meeting on the 25th of January. When we think of a master plan for the skate park, I mean, when I think of the master plan of Marshall Park and where a skate park could fit in, sort of backwards here because normally we wouldn't have anybody coming to us in the midst of trying to come up with a master plan to say, let's put in a skate park right here, right now. And we do in this situation, we have, the group of young men and women that have been working for a few years to try to make this happen. I think if to make this happen at Marshall, I think some flexibility is going to need to be the key. And I almost want to say we'd be planning around them. So if they go in at Marshall, we certainly wouldn't want to put them in the middle of, and I'll use the 90-foot diamond for an example. We may not want to put them in the middle of the 90-foot diamond because that's the biggest piece of area we have right now that's easily accessible. So we may not want to do that, but there may be another spot that we could put them that would still allow us to continue with our master planning around them going in. It's not the most ideal situation, but I think at this point, it's sort of where we're at. And again, the fact that these kids have been working for as long as they have, that stands for something, or it needs to mean something. Even though we're not the ones who got ourselves into this, we're in it now. So working with these kids and the adults, figuring out what their needs are. If Marshall Park does end up being the place they put it, then we'll figure out where to put them, and then we'll be master planning around them for our additional needs. Again, not ideal, but I think it's where we're at this point. So.
Karen,
Depends on
as
their
far-
funding situation as well. I mean, that's only a scenario in which if they've raised the money to build it ahead of when we're ready, but it may line up where we're able to actually at least sketch, on paper, sketch an area out and make it all start to come together.
I think that, and they'll explain more on the 25th. I think part of their thing is knowing where they're going to build allows them to create a plan in order for them to get the proper pricing for the scope of work they want to do. There is, a couple of level areas over there, and then there's a couple of not so level areas, such as where the bathhouse was. And from what I've been told, they can work with an area where the bathhouse was. They can incorporate the hill that's over there into their plan. But if we don't, if we're not able to narrow down a spot for them to put it, then it's harder for them to create their scope, so they don't know what the official cost is. So just a little bit of creativity, I guess, in as we work with them, and then figure out, and they may come back to us and say, we absolutely don't want to be in Marshall Park. We don't even want to entertain that. And that's their right to do. So, I think we just need to talk to them and then sort of go from there. But you're right, it could line up with what we want to do, and time-wise, budget-wise, the whole 9 yards. My gut tells me, and Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, my gut tells me as the town manager is going to draw a hard line in the sand in terms of what the capital is available. Unlike other years where we've seen some increases and they've been able to throw more items in for that year, I think this year may be one of those exceptions to that. And I think she might draw that line in the sand, and number 13 may stay unfunded for this year. Doesn't mean it won't happen next year, but my gut is it's not going to be funded this year.
That brings me to another question I have for the commission, specifically on that subject, and that is the town warrant is about to open, or town meeting warrant is about to open, I believe, based on the date. I don't remember exactly when it's opening, but it's soon and closes in March. Is there any interest from the commissioners in drafting a funding article for the 50,000 or a lesser amount to allow us to have some funds available to move this project forward as we had hoped with the capital money? I think this would be some sizable support for it if the money's available. I don't know what our overall financial situation looks like going into this budget season yet. We haven't started any of the hearings or, even got a hint as to how the budget looks yet. We'll know in the next month or so. But I just throw that out there as something that over the next roughly month, we would need to decide whether we want to put any type of an article on the warrant to go for funding for consulting help and or maybe the surveying of the property to be the first step to get into this project.
Dave, so I'm not against it. I want to discuss it, but I guess I would like to put a little bit more thought into it. The warrant for submission closes on the 15th of March. So can we discuss this at like our February meeting? And at that point, I think we'll have a better idea of how that she has in fact drawn that hard line in the sand in funding additional requests. I mean, is your gut the same as mine that it's not getting funded this year?
For the most part, yes. I also wonder if the prioritization is going to be shuffled around, which is allowed under the charter.
Yeah.
Town manager has final say. There were some things that were prioritization wise were a little bit unusual from this group of people. And I agreed with it. It's just a little bit different priorities.
Okay. All right, so let's put that, I'll definitely put it, you'll have to remind me, I am making
Yep.
a note of it for the next agenda. I'll definitely put it on there. Okay, so the next one is discussion about creating parks policy and procedures related to maintenance and general use. So all I have to say on that is it's time. We have, as a commission for years, sort of, I don't want to say made things up as we go, but we are being reactive in things that come our way because we've had no policy. So it's time now that we have Kayla to create a policy. My question to you guys is, how do we want to do that? What priorities do we want to focus on? Do we want to focus on field usage priorities, beach priorities? I want to get it all done, but the reality is we're not going to do it all in one sitting. I think it would be more manageable to have small chunks at a time. When I say field usage, I don't mean just who's out there and when. I mean, we have groups that come in that use it. Little League was one of them. They used to sell advertising on the fences. We have no policy for that. We need to start thinking of these things so that we have the policy so that Kayla can enforce said policies of our group. So my question is, where do we want to start? Does anybody have something that's been, they've been thinking about policy-wise, saying that we absolutely need this, that we should start with that? What are people's thoughts on creating policy at all?
Well,
Maybe-
I think, I'm sorry. Who was
Sorry, go
going to
ahead.
say something? No, you go, Susanna. Nothing
Okay.
already here.
I was just thinking if we approach this by thinking about each park separately, like, aren't those signs on the fence, for instance, just at McNally? And, no, are they at Marshall as well?
I don't know. We can take them down, and we it said we'll get an advertisement policy going. That was like 3 years. So
okay. So I mean, maybe it would help us break it down if we went park property to property, and thought about what the issues were at each different space, because they're all so different.
okay. Anna?
My suggestion is to, is to not try to do everything at once. Or, well, not, I guess that's not really what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is, a policies and procedures can go into the end level of the most detailed thing. And sometimes you don't really need that. So we can start creating policies and procedures that sound more like guidelines. And by doing that, it allows us to actually accomplish something to then make the policy or the procedure more, we can add to it the next time around. But I think if we pick, for example, and it doesn't have to cover every topic on the first round. So advertising is one, right? Maintenance is a second one that I think it has been a big question. I mean, how come we have funding for maintenance, but our parks have felt in past in pretty poor condition. So my suggestion is to not be too ambitious about it, is to pick one or two topics that we want to get it done and do them. We don't need to rank them. We just say, hey, how about we discuss X, Y, and Z on the next meeting? And from the discussion, we'll draft up the policy and the procedure. And on the third meeting, we approve. 3 things, we just got it done 3 things. And then from there on, we'll just keep adding. And that's how we're gonna get to a larger document that eventually will encompass everything. So my suggestion should not be too ambitious. I think is start with the low hanging fruit and get those done in a simple way. The way, we've been doing, we discuss some policies and then we come back with the language and then we approve it. And that's it. So start with the low hanging fruit, simple, don't go into too much detail if not needed, and get something done. And the next time, if we want to add we can even have it as a goal. Every month, we're going to pick 3 things that we're going to document it. And we'll document 3 things every month. That's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have anything on policy-wise? All right, so I'm thinking that we start. I'm gonna say maintenance, but I don't know if I mean it in the same way as everybody else does. I think we need to get some policy in place for even just procedures for how organizations need to report stuff to us. We constantly hear that X, Y, and Z is not done, and we constantly say, you never told us. I think if we can create something that's clear and we can literally hand it to them and say, here's our policy when you need something or you see something, and this can go for anybody in the town, right? I mean, it was Dave Passios that reported an overturned porta potty and a broken window. It can be just for the townspeople as well. So I think we should start with thinking over the next few weeks on maintenance. The best way to tackle how we handle things that are coming in that need to get taken care of. And maybe even something bigger blanket wise in terms of overall maintenance, what we expect our parks to look like. That we expect our lawns to be mowed and public use to be afforded by keeping up with things and safety things. We're still dealing with, we have a fence down at one of the fields. We've got, fencing turned out at another one of the fields that, kids walking by get snagged on. That's where I'm thinking we should start. So if folks could, and Marshall Park's going to be probably the freshest in our mind because we've all just walked it. But it can go for any park. So why don't we I'll put it on the agenda, the specific policy and maintenance policy discussion. And then let's go from there and see what we can come up with. But if everybody could sort of put their thinking caps on, like we're back in kindergarten, and think of some things that may fall under that category, and we can tackle it at our next meeting.
To be
Can we-
clear, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. No,
Sorry.
we keep thinking at the same time. It's good.
Sorry, Karen, to be clear, there's nothing written down yet at all. Nothing. Okay,
Not that I
Good
am
to know.
aware of.
okay.
So can we approach this as we're going to create a, just like the town has its bylaws, we are creating one big old document that will encompass everything related to us.
Mhm.
And we are just going to add everything as they come, and is always going to be part of this one master document.
Yep, and there'll be one document so that it can easily be referred back to when anything comes up, when anybody has a question. Right now, the way it happens, and this is not Kayla's fault, but right now, if there's a question, she usually hits me up. Do you have any information on this? And I have to rack my brain and think if we've had anything over the past few years. But we have nothing official. We are just, at this point, as far as I'm concerned, we've just been lucky that we've had such few user groups, because we can offer consistency within a user group. But once you get more in here, because we have no policy, it most likely wouldn't be consistent across the board. So we need to get there. We need to get there so everybody's on the same playing field. And, we're not inadvertently prioritizing one group over another because our policy wasn't there. So yes, one document that can be referred back on will eventually, whether it goes into some sort of Google Drive type thing, I think that's what the finance committee is using right now, or whether Kayla can somehow put a policy page together as we approve things, it would just go one location, here it is. And then if we need to amend, if we decide to, we do have a couple of policies on it, like we have, no dogs on the fields. Things like that can be amended. Those I have, any motion that we have made in over the past 3 or 4 years since I've been here, I have, because I've done most of the minutes. So I have all of those, but they're not in one document, and they're not specific. We've truly been reactive instead of being proactive and been able to think it all out.
Yeah, I mean, another low-hanging fruit might be if you easily have that document of motions approved. We can start with that and start creating sections of it.
Yeah,
And if you have them, and if you send them over, I can always.
I've got to find it. My previous laptop decided to take a long vacation, but I don't mind. Some snow day, I'll just sit, and if I don't have it, I can go back in the old minutes and just pull it all up. It's not a problem.
All right, that's a lot.
No, it's not too bad. I don't mind, I'm visual and I like to see things more than once, so I don't mind doing it. All right, so that will be the plan for the discussions as we move forward in creating policy.
Can we have some, just to, okay, so takeaways from this, it's just easier for me, for my mind to keep things in order like that. So you asked for us to come up with sort of policies that we think we should start addressing right away. We need to decide how we're gonna collect this document and where we're gonna publish it. And is that something that Kayla can work on her own and decide and make a suggestion?
I
can easily do that, and it can be uploaded to MyRec. It's just a matter of how you guys want to do it.
We can have her upload it to MyRec, and we can even just keep a backup copy for ourselves as well.
Okay, so that's decide how we're gonna do it. We're gonna publish our policies on MyRec. Okay.
Anything that excludes me from having to do, that's what we should do.
Okay. And I think there's some policies that we already have, like the fee, right?
Yes, the stuff, yep. We do have some stuff from, especially with like the field usage stuff that came up that we passed at the last meeting.
Right, so
Yeah.
can we say that we can start already adding that to this section?
Yeah, she should, oh, Kayla, I promised you I'd send you a document and I forgot. My apologies. I will forward it to you. Yes, and those will be up anyway because they're part of a bigger, they're part of another section, which is field rental. I don't know what the
Okay,
field usage. So those are things that are going to be available on the site anyway, without us having to even ask her to do, because she needs that in order for groups to request usage of the field. She needs that.
okay,
But yes, we will make sure it gets added.
all right. And then, so we'll come up with ideas. Kayla will take first actions on these based on current policy. You're gonna look into some, digging up the past approved motions, because those right there are policies that we have. And I guess Kayla can start sectioning those according to whatever the title of the motion was. And, okay, so I guess everybody has homework for this, huh?
Yeah, well, I think it's, for me, it's hard to like put an agenda item together and expect you guys to be able to like on demand give answers.
No, I think it's more of my like, I don't, action items from meetings. I'm
Yeah.
just used to that.
You're good at that. So yeah. Okay. So that'll definitely be on the next agenda. I guess three really quick things. The park revolving account, we don't really fully need to have another full discussion over this. I guess I wanted to make sure, or put it out there that the warrant article that we read at the last meeting that said that the revolving fund was collecting the monies excluding the town beach, that was from like 1984 or something. Karen Brochu, who is the town accountant, she watched our meeting and she was able to make a correction, which I'm psyched she did because I would never have found it. A year or two later, in like October of 1986, there was a warrant article that succeeded and passed, striking the excluding town beach from that revolving fund. So I just wanted to make sure it was on public record that we were corrected on that, which is a good thing. It doesn't, I read the article again today and it didn't say how that money was expended. So we may have to figure out that at some point, but it makes me feel better at this point that all the money that's coming in is rightfully supposed to be there. And that nobody's coming after us for the town beach amounts because we weren't supposed to collect it or something. It was all changed, so we are correct in that. So I wanted to throw that out there.
Karen, part of the question there though is still, are we under the best type of revolving account that we could be or should be operating under?
I'll be the first to admit I scanned the stuff that Kayla sent. I didn't dive too deep into it.
Mhm.
Did I get a copy of what she sent you or she just sent you?
No, I thought we all got it.
Okay.
Oh, look. I mean, it's on the agenda. If you guys want to have a full discussion about the revolving fund, we can. If we want to wait and see, to our February meeting where warrant articles aren't due until March, we can certainly do that too.
My only concern is based on how you interpret the verbiage in the Mass General Law that creates that particular type of revolving account. It does limit some of the things that money can be used for. Kayla, correct me anytime if I overstate something or whatever, but my reading through it twice gave me some concerns as to things that a different type of a revolving account would allow us to spend that money for, and the requirement to spend it down under $30,000, although being probably a moot point over the next year or two, for the long term, I think that's detrimental.
I agree. I'm not against trying to get the type of revolving account we have changed. I'm not against that.
I think the important part is to, first of all, identify whether or not the commission wants to change to a different form. and then have the discussions with town manager as to, and Karen Proshu as to whether they're on board with that type of a change and the pros and cons to it. Those are
Would
the
feel,
two action items that I think need to be vetted before we do anything else.
can I do a little bit of homework before we discuss this anymore? Like, I didn't read this email at all. I'm sorry, Keela.
Sure.
That's right, yeah.
It's the one on December 14th with the 2 links in it.
So the
Is that the
53,
one?
50 something E and a half.
Yeah. All right. I'll read this tonight or tomorrow and
So we have a
be
53.
more informed. Okay.
Right? We have a 53D, and if we were to change it, we would be looking to go to a 53E and a half. So you want to look to see what the differences are between the D and the E and a half. And then, yes, but I'm fine. We will absolutely have we'll put this on our 3rd meeting. I like to say, Karen, you put it kicking the can down the road.
Just
Building our
one-
agenda as we go.
Yeah, just to keep in mind that if we do adamantly come up with a reason that we want to change, it's got to go to town meeting.
Correct.
Whether it be in the spring or the fall, it doesn't really matter, but that is a town meeting warrant vote.
That one I knew. All right. The other one was, does anybody want to be the open space rep? Look at all those hands going up.
Was toying with it, but then it's
How
Probably,
often? You was gonna say yes?
They meet
Chris?
once a month.
Chris, are you gonna say yes?
yeah, it's been weighing on my mind. It's easier right now, but if soccer came back online, it's another night that would interfere potentially with soccer practice. Not that I envision soccer coming back anytime soon, but it was interesting. Listening to that meeting, Karen, it was interesting.
It's a fantastic group of
Yeah.
people, really smart people. Honestly, like, if it wasn't, it's harder for me to do remote meetings. Easier for me sometimes to get out of the house, but it's just hard right now with the age groups that we have going on in the house. So if nobody wants it, I'll stay with it. It would be my preference
I'll,
to.
I'll,
Close Safari update.
All right, who-
I'll sign up for it. Once a week, once a month.
once a month. Can I get since I'm asking for it, I don't mind making the motion. I'm going to make a motion to appoint Anna Lockwood as the Park Commission rep to open space.
Second,
Right, a quick roll call on that. Chris Sullivan,
Aye.
Susanna,
Hi.
Dave.
aye.
Now you can't say no, Anna. Anna,
I,
and I for myself. They meet next Tuesday.
Just not tomorrow.
Zing.
I was gonna, you were quite quick to make that motion.
They
Um,
meet, on the 19th.
We forgot to pause for discussion, I think, after the.
I know that was really like, let's not think again.
We're not having a discussion. So in all honesty, Anna, so here's the thing, if you can't make a meeting, don't stress over it.
It's nice that the meetings are on Zoom, actually. It makes it easier to make them.
Yep, so I will let Brandon Kibbe know. I will let, they have, their admin is the one who sends out a lot of the emails, and that's Marjorie over in the planning office. So I'll let the two of them know. They'll include you on the agendas. I will probably make an appearance sometime soon because there's a couple of things that I was following, or I think I had some action items to do, and I won't leave those undone. But yeah, it is really a fun group of people, and they're very smart. Probably one of my.
No, we're smart too, Karen. You
Yeah,
keep
but
saying that,
as-
but like, we are
as a
smart
member-
people.
As a member though, I find it to be fun. They have a lot of, it's just stuff that I don't know, and they have a really good way of educating you on these topics. So
Okay, all right.
Karen, could you do one thing possibly before that next meeting? And that is to bring Anna up to date on the couple of properties that we've discussed might be of interest to parks that's being considered. for transfer from general care and custody or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's gonna be a while before those actually get transferred, but yes. So Anna, I will talk to you about the open space stuff that's
Okay.
right now offline. All right, perfect there. Our next meeting is actually going to be the 25th of January. It is with the skate park folks. I will tell you exactly what is on the agenda. We have one agenda item. I am open to changing this agenda item if anybody feels that it's not worded correctly. Right now, I have discussion with the Lunenburg Skate Park Group regarding the pros and cons of building a skate park at Marshall Park and potential decision or vote on supporting a park and park size at this location. My thought was that covered everything if it needed to cover it, but I will be the first one to say that in order for a size discussion to come back up, it's going to require a motion and a passing motion if it's going to be requesting to support anything other than what the commission has already voted to support, which is 5,000 square feet. But I just wanted that in there just in case somebody decided they wanted to make that motion to try to support something bigger.
Okay.
Does that sound all right to everybody? Is there anything that you'd like changed, added, removed?
No, it sounds good to me.
Okay.
Good.
That meeting is starting at 7 PM, not 6:30, so it's 7
Okay.
PM on the 25th. I'm going to do my best at keeping it on track. I think we did, for the number of agenda items, I think we did very well today, unlike some other nights that we've had. So that's a good thing. So I'm hoping to be able to keep it on track again. And so the homework I have for you on that side of things is to, if you don't know how to use the Lunenburg GIS site, please reach out and somebody, either Dave or I, can show you how to use it, is to look at the overhead of Marshall Park and to, are there areas there that you think a potential skate park could go? On that GIS, there are tools on the side that will allow you to draw a shape and it will give you the square footage of that shape. So basically draw yourselves 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 square foot, mark whatever you are thinking and see where you can get it to fit. Because they are going to be looking for some suggestions, at least for locations. And I know that's one of their things that they would like to start talking about. But they could also turn to us and say, we really don't think that it belongs at Marshall Park. So we will have the pros and cons discussion and then see where it leads us.
The other very useful tool to look at that property is Google Earth Pro. It's a free download, and you get satellite images of the property. So you can actually, if you set it up right, you can see the topography, you can see the open spaces, the treed spaces, and it has all the measuring tools, and you can lay out all kinds of different shapes and figure out what the area of that shape is, so on and so
Go
forth.
on to the GIS map as well. You can, there's a layer that you can change. And if you change it to imagery, it will go from showing you just like a map to actually showing you a graphic of that area, complete with ball fields and stuff like that. So
What's really cool about Google Earth Pro is you can, if you can find the calendar slider, you can actually run that back to 1960 or 50s. I don't remember which.
So they'll be with us on the 25th. Bring any questions you have for them. If it's something that you think of ahead of time and you want to send it over to the skate park folks beforehand, you're welcome to do that, especially if you think it's something that needs some research or further thought by them. But I've been in regular touch with them, trying to figure out what they need from us and trying to keep this as streamlined as possible, so we're not looking at a 10-hour meeting. So we will do the best we can do on the 25th and see where it leads us.
Can we start maybe on our agenda because this was the last item of their agenda, right?
Yeah.
Karen?
Yeah.
Can we have, and I think the selectmen has this old business, which it just allows us to follow up on some items that were previously discussed. For example, in our last meeting, we talked about Kayla was going to advertise the Town Beach positions. And I just want to get an opportunity to ask if that happened. So the town selectmen have this old business where it just kind of like touch base on some of these things. And I'm wondering where is the appropriate, because I know I can send her an email about this stuff, but the public doesn't know.
So it's me. So I have two comments on that. Even if we list old business, we are technically supposed to list the topics within old business. I haven't looked at a Board of Selectmen agenda lately, but by open meeting law, you can have vague topics. So people are supposed to know exactly what you're talking about.
Can we have Park Kayla's updates?
Yeah, so I left that off. I accidentally
Oh,
left it off. That's not, it typically is there. It's usually, it's why I had her throw something in today about parks programming. It's usually up at the top. The second agenda item is usually DPW and Rec Director updates. So that's
okay.
on me. Kayla, did you advertise for those positions?
I sent them to the Mass Parks and Rec site. He has not sent me back a thing saying that they've been posted yet. I sent them on Friday because I wanted to review the job descriptions from last year first to make sure that no changes or anything needed to be made. And then I am going to follow up with Julie and let her know that they're okay to post, and she'll tell me basically the fee that goes associated with it where she posts them.
Okay.
And we had talked about a backup for the MyRac website. Is that something that we looked into, having a second person who can be your backup, Kayla?
No.
Okay.
So I'm gonna make a recommendation on that, and my recommendation is to wait until Samantha comes back from maternity leave and have her be the backup.
When is she coming back?
She just went out on maternity leave.
Because Kayla is gonna go in maternity leave.
It'll be before that. And if
Sam will be back before I'm going out, at least a few months, if I remember correctly.
I think that was the topic of discussion at the last meeting too, was that she would be the proper
Right.
person.
Well, and what
I think.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking is we won't have a backup if the two people that do it will be out of maternity leave for almost.
Sam's already out.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably 2 weeks, if not more, into her maternity leave.
Mhm.
So I would expect her back probably by the end of February into March.
Okay. And
Yeah.
and Bob had agreed to check Rob, to check the building, the Town Beach building throughout the winter. And do we know if he took action on that? He had said he would.
I have no idea because I didn't talk to him about that, but I will send out an email and ask.
Okay. And some of these things are good to like just have a quick touch base, in my opinion, on during our meetings for the public to know. So I know I can send an email to Rob, but I think it's good for the public to know, oh, I don't, because if I'm following the Parks Commission's, what's going on, and I hear that, and I might start thinking about it every time I drive by the Town Beach. So if we have that follow-up,
Yeah.
then
No.
the public will know. Okay.
I will ask him on that. Yeah, but no, that was 100% me. I own every mistake I make lately. I need to stop this. All right. Does anybody have any public or board comments before we log off?
Do we need to set a meeting beyond the 25th?
Oh, yes, we do. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. You should be the chair, Chris.
Yeah.
Let's have a vote, quick.
I'm definitely having a discussion.
Definitely having a discussion. All righty. All right. So what do you guys want for February?
Can I ask, are Thursdays and Fridays just off the table for everybody? They're no good.
No, they're fine for me.
They're fine for me.
Thursday's gonna be tough only because we're coming into Finance Committee hearing season.
Okay.
But well, I don't want to push it too early either.
Okay.
I mean, at very worst, I'd have to bail just before 7 o'clock.
Does
So-
everybody have a social life nowadays? Like, I could do Friday nights.
I can do
could
Friday
do-
nights.
Kayla?
I could do Friday until COVID's over.
I'm not moving to Fridays after COVID. I'm not doing that. To be honest with you, Mondays are hard for me, but not for the reason that you think. It's because I have to remember to do the agenda. Kayla, we don't need you. You can log off.
Okay.
Well, can Kayla do Fridays?
Kayla, can you do Fridays if we switch to Fridays?
Most of the time, yes.
Okay.
My husband's schedule is switching. He's no longer, thank God, going to be on 11 to 7. He'll be switching to 3 to 11. So it'll be a little bit easier for our schedules, but Fridays pretty much work for me also.
Okay. All right. I'll let you know later what we decide.
Okay. All right.
So
Bye,
just-
thank you.
Thanks, Kayla. Throw
Kayla.
some dates out at me, people.
Um,
I'm good with Fridays.
I prefer Monday over Friday, but I can do a
You
Friday.
do,
I mean, There's
okay.
nothing, again, there's not much going on right now.
well,
Uh,
when does finance start up, Dave?
I was just looking on the schedule I
Yeah.
have here, although not all the meetings are on here that finance is gonna have.
Oh, can you do Thursdays, Chris?
Yeah, there's nothing really in my
Yeah,
calendar right now. The days don't really,
right.
Yeah, you know,
it
if we could
fluctuates
do,
week to week.
yeah, if we could do 6 o'clock on Thursdays, that'd be fine. I'd have at least an hour.
Are you,
Most Thursdays, and
are you serious now?
No?
That's
what
like,
with the 6 o'clock?
yeah,
Are you kidding? You know what my TC Pasio's meetings are at?
I can't even. So
5:15?
I don't mind moving to Thursday. I don't think there's no way I can do before 6:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't think I could pull it off. But that said, the other problem with Thursdays is that I need somebody available in my house and my husband's on finance committee. So.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got two finance
everyone's
committee
sorted in my house right now. What-
conflicts.
We'd want to be a couple weeks after the 25th, I would assume.
So
Is that
why
where-
don't we why don't we do it a try? Give it a try for Friday night, see
Yeah.
how we feel.
And we can change it every month, guys. There's no.
Yeah, let's give it a try on the Fridays, boys. Okay, I'll make a motion to.
12th or 19th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 19th is February vacation. The 12th is the start of February vacation, if that makes a difference.
Oh, is that
Oh.
vacation? That is vacation week, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to do the 12th then?
Yeah, maybe the 12th, just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so Park Commission. Do you want to do 6:30 or 7?
6:30 if
6:30 is
possible.
fine. Yeah.
All right, 6:30 on the 12th of February, and we will see everybody on the January
25th.
25th. And somebody
7
give
p.m.
me a motion so we can get the heck out of here.
Motion to adjourn at 8:33.
Second.
Roll call, Susanna,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Anna,
I
Chris,
Aye.
and I for myself. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Aye.
thank you.
Night.
Bye.